All right, good evening, everybody. It's just about 7 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Just waiting a couple minutes here as people join in. Looks like most of our audience is here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the 2021 Rare Bird Recap webinar. My name is Kayla Henry. I'm an outreach coordinator here with Great Basin Bird Observatory. I have a feeling most of you attending are familiar with us already, but if not, GBBO is a nonprofit based in Reno, Nevada. We are an organization of scientists dedicated to furthering bird conservation in the Great Basin and adjoining regions. We do this through research, partnerships, and education, and hosting webinars like this. We had hoped to hold this event in person, but out of an abundance of caution, we moved our January lecture series online, but we hope to see you all soon. Just a couple logistics. Please use the chat feature at the bottom of the screen for questions. We will hold all questions until the end of the presentation. We will also have a fun bird quiz at the end to test your ID skills, so stay tuned for that. This presentation will be recorded and posted to our YouTube channel. With that, I'll now pass it over to GBBO's Executive Director, Elizabeth Ammon, who will be introducing our presenter tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Kayla. So I'm Elizabeth. I'm the director of the Great Basin Bird Observatory, and it's with great pleasure that I can introduce my coworker, Ned Bohman, who has worked with us since 2015 as a wildlife biologist, and at first mostly in the role of a year-round field biologist, training and leading field crews. And now more recently, he has become part of our outreach team. And even more recently, he has actually become the secretary of the Nevada Bird Records Committee, and filling kind of the big shoes that Martin Myers left at our doorstep. And I'm sure he's going to do a great job. And I'm sure this presentation will be a representation of his excellent birding skills, which is why he was nominated for that position. And so I'm really looking forward to all of this, and also the community science project that he's going to play a major role in, and that I'm hoping that he will mention at one point to let people know that there's going to be volunteer opportunities for Opinion J research. So anyway, with that, I'll hand it over to Ned.
Well, thanks, Elizabeth. Like Elizabeth said, I've been with GBBO since 2015, and I have recently become the secretary of the Nevada Birds Records Committee, and that's what I'll be talking to you guys about tonight. But before I get into that, I'll briefly talk about our Opinion J community science project. It's a really neat initiative we've started, and it's a really cool partnership with the local Audubon chapters, showing some excitement at getting involved. But it's a chance for everyone to get involved and be part of contributing to a great conservation database. We've been collecting data on Pinyon jays for years now, and they're a notoriously difficult species to study and get information on. And so we've recently launched this initiative to allow members of the public to help us with this. And we're very excited about it. It's still new, and we're still working out all sorts of details, but there are lots of ways that you all can get involved if you're interested. So please do reach out to us if you're interested in contributing to this research. So it's a really neat project. And what I'll say, there's more information about that in previous webinars and on our website. So with that, I'll get into tonight's material. I am going to be talking about the review species that showed up in 2021 that were reviewed by the Nevada Bird Records Committee, which is a volunteer body composed of 7 members, myself, and 6 voting members. That's the word I was looking for. So I'm the secretary, and we've got Paul Hurtado, Ben Zyla, Alex Harper, Justin Straight, Frank Fogarty, and Greg Cyphers currently on board. Greg has been part of the committee for over 20 years and is leaving us as soon as he finishes reviewing his most recent set of records. So thank you, Greg, for your years of service, and thank you all you guys too, but I have years to thank you. So special thanks to Greg. These are the species that were endorsed in 2021. And I mentioned they are the review list, which is species that have been seen less than 5 times in the preceding 10 years. So it's not just every bird that gets flagged on your eBird checklist, but there's actually a specific set of bylaws that governs the species that we review, and we take good care to curate this list. So so thanks again to my volunteers who work very hard on getting this information out to you all. Some neat records came through this year, so I'm excited to get into it. The first record is a least flycatcher, which is actually no longer a review species and has not been a review species since 2010, if I'm interpreting my database correctly. We've got 15 endorsed records, mostly from migrant traps, and a surprising number from the Dyer area. And if you guys aren't familiar, that's down southern Nevada along the same latitude as Tonopah, a little further west in Fish Lake Valley, but not quite in California. And so this particular record was an old written description, and the reason it was reviewed was because it's the earliest reviewable record of least fly that we have. It's an old written description of a silent bird, so a tough record to review. Found by John Dunn, Gary Rosenberg, and Paul Lehman. Just some birders, you guys might have heard of them. So in their description, they do call it the second state record, though it's the earliest record we've been able to find and review. And so it was endorsed. It was a difficult decision for the members to make. I put some photos up there. None of them are the bird, obviously, in question, but the top bird is a least flycatcher photographed in Minnesota. The lower left is a Hammond's flycatcher, and the lower right is a dusky flycatcher. So for those of you not familiar with the Empidonax flycatchers, they are notoriously difficult to identify, and especially so when silent, and even more difficult to endorse when it is a 20-plus-year-old written description of a silent bird. So an interesting bird nonetheless, though. They, like I said, most of them have showed up at our migrant traps, which, like Miller's Rest area, a lot of the stands of cottonwoods and Dyer. But I believe they've bred in California. I didn't do my homework, so don't quote me on that. But I know GBBO surveyors have recorded what appear to be territorial individuals on multiple occasions. We had a bird return to the same exact spot on the Walker River at least 2 years in a row. And I had a singing bird on the Truckee River, the lower Truckee River on the Indian Reservation a few years ago. So they're possibly expanding their range, but with all them showing up at migrant traps, it's hard to say what they're doing. The next bird is a blue jay, and we talked about these guys last year. Two of these were pending at the end of last year, so I mentioned them. We had 3 submissions this year, and it did put us over the line, and we were able to remove them from our review list. That means that there have been 5 records in the past 10 years. Excuse me. The first was a dead bird found in a yard north of Wells. The photographs were diagnostic. It was, no question, endorsed as a blue jay. Second is the bird in the photograph that showed up in a yard in Tuscarora, north of Elko on the Mountain City Highway, also November 2020. So both of those were pending as of last year and got endorsed at the very beginning of this year. The third record the third submission of blue jay was actually two birds found in West Wendover at the Tawana Vista Golf Course by a young birder, Zach Yoshioka. And I totally apologize for butchering your name. I'm sure I didn't pronounce that right, Zach. But shout out to Zach. He's a 14-year-old, I believe, and he fills up my eBird data reviewer queue with species I need to review. He is out there finding good birds constantly. So it's just great to see young birders getting out there and submitting to the records committee. Thanks, Zach. But just a quick note more on blue jays is a lot of corvids are wandering species. And given the rural, sparsely populated nature of the eastern part of our state, it's pretty likely that there's more blue jays wandering around than we realize. So it seems fitting to remove them from our review list at this point. Next record is the snow bunting, which we also mentioned last year, and I believe I showed off this photo of Greg Nelson taking a picture of the bird, but it was, so it was Pam taking a picture of Greg taking a picture of the bird. That's what I was trying to say. It's the fourth endorsed record of snow bunting. We've got previous birds at Carson Lake, the Go Shoots Hawk Watch, and at Lake Mead. This bird was found in the Desitoya Mountains, so central Nevada, at the Buffalo Hump Mine. So just goes to show what you can find by getting out there. These snow buntings do move around a lot in the wintertime. Some years there's a lot of them around, and some years there's not. So going to places like central Nevada and the Desitoyas is just as good a shot as any to find them. Next up is the ruddy ground dove, which was also a pending record at the end of last year, and I did mention this at last year's presentation. This bird was found by Tim Almond at Lake Mead, the 33-hole overlook, which a good number of our records tonight actually came from this location, and it's where the Las Vegas Wash flows into Lake Mead. So it's a nutrient-rich area that attracts birds. This is our 9th endorsed record, but most of our records of ruddy ground doves are older. We've only got 4 since 2000, so not likely to be removed from our review list anytime soon, though it does have some interesting tendencies to move north, and I, again, believe there's confirmed breeding in Arizona and Southern California. Fairly certain it was Guy McCaskey in 2003 that found nesting birds in California. But they're primarily a tropical species found throughout Central and South America, but they regularly show up north of the border. And this was our 9th one in Nevada. Next up is the Hutton's Vireo, which, again, I talked about last year. Don't worry, we'll get into new birds soon. But this one's a fun one because it's a state first. They breed remarkably close to Nevada on the western slope of the Sierra and even in northern Arizona. They're just not particularly prone to wandering. But this bird was photographed and found by Ben Sonnenberg on the Reno Christmas bird count in 2020. He thought it was a kinglet, then he thought it was a vireo, definitely thought it was worth taking photos of, but not realizing that we had not recorded a Hutton's vireo in Nevada, he kind of forgot about his photos for a few days, and then, lo and behold, Ben Sonnenberg found our state record Hutton's vireo at Virginia Lake Park in Reno, of all places. So, good find, Ben. Next up is a red-headed woodpecker. So this was not pending at the end of last year. I don't think I mentioned this last year. This was found up in 6 Mile Canyon, just outside of Virginia City, by Paul and Alex Linton, though possibly found earlier as indicated by some sort of social media post, I believe. Personally, I'm not on there. I'm not privy to these things, but I do believe there was discussion of someone's eBird list with comments that were pretty compellingly suggesting that they saw a red-headed woodpecker up there, though passed it off as a funny-looking red-breasted sapsucker at the time. And it wasn't until later on that it was realized that no, this is actually a red-headed woodpecker. So it's the same area that attracted a painted redstart a few years ago that stuck around for a while. So good patch to check near Reno for fun birds. But we've got one previously endorsed record of red-headed woodpecker, and it's from Pahranagat National Wildlife Refuge. And I believe that was in the 90s. I don't have my notes here, but it was a while ago. And so this is only our second record. Eastern species that, like many, reaches the westernmost part of its range along the front range of the Rocky Mountains. And this particular bird stuck around for a while and allowed a lot of birders to get photos of it. Even myself, I got to see this bird, though Clayton Peoples had much better photos than I did. So nice photos, Clayton. Our next record, we have a little blue heron that was found at the Clark County Wetlands Park by Joe Tuvell. This bird didn't stick around for too long. I remember seeing it reported and went out looking for it. I thought I was there a few days after the fact and I couldn't find it, but this is the 6th endorsed record of Little Blue. They're all from Southern Nevada. The little blue heron is pretty much a Gulf Coast bird in the US, though they do move north and inland a bit in the breeding season. So they move around a little bit, but they're found in Mexico, Central and South America as well. And this is actually all of our previous records were from spring and summer months. This is actually the latest in the year of any of the records, but see from the photo, that's a little blue heron. So nice bird, Joe. Our next record was a western gull found at Lake Mead, also the 33-hole overlook that I previously mentioned with the ruddy ground dove. And I don't think this is the last record that came from that site. So good spot to check. Western gulls have a very coastal distribution. They're an ocean gull, California, Oregon, Washington. The fairly straightforward ID as far as gulls go, though this does get a little complicated further north and when you consider hybrids. And I'll just briefly talk about that. I don't want to go into the weeds of gull ID here, but when you've got an adult plumage bird like this, it's pretty straightforward. A lot of times the birds of this complex that show up here are younger birds that are a lot tougher to identify, and so you're really going to want to look at the primary color, the head shape, the structure of the bird, the evenness of the brown coloring, the bill. Is it all dark? Does it have a light base? These kind of things. But fortunately, this was an adult plumage bird. That's a fairly straightforward ID. This was our 9th endorsed record, but we've only got 3 from the past 5 years. So most of these records are older birds. Many are from Lake Mead, more than one from Walker Lake. We've got one from Pyramid Lake, and one even showed up at Sunset Park right in urban Las Vegas. So, and you can see, just back to the ID there, that's a ring-billed gull behind it, and you can see the size difference as well is rather useful when looking at these dark mantled gulls. But we can talk more about gull ID later during the quiz if there's questions. Our next record is a glossy ibis. We talked about these guys last year, so I don't need to go into the ID too much other than that it's difficult. But you can see in this photo, the side by side, there's the white-faced ibis on the left and the glossy is on the right there in the foreground kind of. This is the first one that we've got from Northern Nevada, our 6th endorsed record, but all the previous ones are from Southern Nevada. This bird was at the Lemon Valley Water Treatment Plant in Reno, found by Logan Call. So So like I said before, it's a difficult ID, only even possible at certain times of year. In the fall, immature birds are often not possible to separate. But fortunately, this bird showed up in the spring, adult breeding plumage, good photos with a close eye, pretty easy to separate there. Our next record, we have a Mississippi kite that was found at Corn Creek Visitor Center, the Desert National Wildlife Refuge in southern Nevada, which does tend to attract a lot of funky birds. This bird was found by Emmett Iverson. We've got a lot of records of Mississippi kite. We talked about them at the previous presentation last year as well. We are currently reviewing the 5th record within 10 years that would remove it from the review list. So that's a pending record. So this bird was endorsed and it was the 4th in the past 10 years. But it's kind of an interesting situation with the new record. It was seen by Chris Aquila actually a year prior. It was a while before we got the submission, before he realized. But he saw it, and while he was driving, Chris has a knack for seeing birds while driving and stopping and making a scene. If you haven't read his eBird account, you should check it out, because you can really just imagine the chaos of Chris hopping out and looking at this bird with his camera and cars honking and swerving around him. But he saw a Mississippi kite while driving through Las Vegas. What are you going to do? So the interesting situation is that this bird was seen about a month after the latest confirmed sighting of a long-staying bird at the Wetlands Park. And now the Wetlands Park bird, both birds were well photographed, but the Wetlands Park bird, pretty clearly an immature individual. And Chris's photos, snapped while not getting hit by traffic, pretty conclusively show an adult bird. Not to discuss pending records too much, but the photos speak for themselves. So it's an interesting situation when these two birds of the same species showed up within a month, but the photos show fairly clearly that they're different birds. So we've got a lot of records. They wander pretty regularly. Their range is kind of restricted as a result of, a lot of the factors that affected raptors in the 70s and 80s. But they're pretty restricted to the southeastern US and the southern plains, and then a few remnant breeding populations in the southwest. So great bird to see in Nevada. Our next record is a pine warbler, which is another fun one because we had our first pine warbler last year. This is our second endorsed record. And this bird in the photo is not the bird that Ben saw, but his description, his very thorough description, I might add, conjured up an image of a bird that looked like this. At least that's what I imagined when I was reading his description. He very thoroughly described the bird and went into detail how he separated out the other similar warbler species. And as we know, warblers can be a treat to ID, especially when they're gray. But we long expected pine warbler. We finally had our first one last year, southern Nevada as well. This bird was found in Prim. And I do have a comparison photo to show. So this was the bird that showed up last year. So a lot of variability in warbler plumage, but kudos Ben on that great description and getting that record endorsed. Second pine warbler. Now we have a yellow-crowned night heron. This bird was also from the Wetlands Park, which is also part of the Las Vegas Wash. So you'll see we have a few records came from the Wetlands Park, a few from Hole 33. Those are pretty much the opposite ends of the wash. The Clark County Wetlands Park is further west along the wash. But a lot of birds show up there. It's a very, very diverse bird community and rich habitat. This is our second endorsed record of yellow-crowned night heron, the previous at Paranagit in 1992. But they look similar to black-crowned night herons, but are separated by really by bill and body structure. You can see this bird's got really long legs and a really thick bill, whereas the black-crowned night heron is just a much more squat bird with a stout bill, but not quite that stout. So they breed in the eastern U.S. There's year-round populations in coastal Mexico, Central America, and South America, but they don't do a lot of wandering. So good bird. Common crane is our next record, found at Carson Lake in Fallon. This was found by Logan Call, who you might remember also found that glossy ibis. And again, with the eBird comments, it's some of the best parts about these birds are the story of the finder and the finding of the bird. If you guys didn't see, Logan wrote a great comment section when he found this bird. I think he might have been a little excited. This is our third endorsed record. Previous birds were at Overton and also in Halleck in Elko County, which is an older record. But the one at Overton was within the past 10 years, I believe. But this particular bird stuck around for a while and was obliging for many birders despite the massive area it was using. It seemed to develop sort of a daily pattern where folks were finding it in one spot in the morning and in a different spot pretty reliably in the afternoon. But I even fielded phone calls from an old GBBO employee who now lives in Florida, who was considering flying out to give this guy a shot. We discussed the rental car market in depth and how it might be better to try to fly into Vegas to see this bird and drive up. But and I got to see this one too. Finally saw it on my second attempt, nearly a month after it was first reported. So thanks, Dave McNinch, for giving me the tip. Our next record, we have a reddish egret. This was found by Mike Baker at the 33-hole overlook, again, at Lake Mead National Rec area. This guy stuck around for a while. The latest report on eBird was October 6th, and the first submission we got was August 13th. So a good few months this bird was hanging out there at the Delta, enjoying the fish apparently. But this is our fifth endorsed record. All previous records are from Lake Mead except for one in Paranagit. But the reddish egret has a pretty southerly distribution, coastal southern Florida, a few spots along the Gulf Coast, and then down into the tropics along the coast. So not a bird that is often seen in many places in the US, but a good bird for Nevada. Next record is a purple gallinule. Was found at the Clark County Wetlands Park by David Zeckman, who, let's see if I can make this work. He didn't get photos, but he got a video. So this is an immature bird. The adults are a very showy purple iridescent, hence the name, but nonetheless distinctly identifiable as a juvenile purple gallinule, with the thick base to the bill. The all-white undertail coverts are really what does it for this one. But similar looking to our expected common gallinule and American coot, but maybe longer legs, thicker bill. All white undertail is really the field mark that'll separate this one out. But this is our fourth endorsed record. They are all from southern Nevada, except for one specimen rather, that was collected in 1965 in Eureka. And the records committee reviewed that in 2017 and did endorse it. Magnificent frigate bird is our next record. And actually, this is our final record that was endorsed in 2021. This was seen by Chris Aquila while driving in Las Vegas. Deja vu all over again. He wrote a very humorous comment on eBird about this finding, and the scene sounded maybe not as dramatic, but a little bit similar to his Mississippi kite sighting, where he saw an exciting bird while driving and hopped out of the car to frantically photograph and document what he was seeing. But you can see from the photo, pretty clear, that's a frigate bird. This is our second endorsed record. The other bird was from Lake Mead, and there was another non-endorsed record from Las Vegas. But there's a couple other species of frigate bird that confounded our reviewers here with the ID. So we all had to hit the books and really get into the details of frigate bird ID here, because you consider great and lesser frigate bird being much less likely, but nonetheless, when an unlikely bird shows up, you have to consider all the unlikely possibilities. And I believe there was what is it? It's a pale panel on the upper wing that would have been apparent in a great frigate bird, but not in a, geez, I'd have to check the books to remember now. But there were the finer points of frigate bird ID had to be touched on before this record could be confidently endorsed. So good find, Chris, again while driving in Las Vegas. So those are all of the records that were endorsed in 2021. We have a number of records pending, which I'll talk about in a second here. But I would just like to plug the committee here and let everyone out there know that this is how you submit sightings to the Nevada Bird Records Committee. This is our URL. There's a very easy form you can fill out. There is a very easy Dropbox widget you can attach photos to. And eBird is not the end all be all of bird records. This is what we do here. In previous years, I'd polled the committee for our next pick on what was going to show up next in the state. And since no one's picks showed up except for Jean's, and she's no longer on the committee, I kept our list the same and added one of my own and one that we were sort of discussing. So any and all of these are what the committee thinks might show up next. And so before we get into our quiz, I'll just pause and see if there are any questions.
There's no questions that have come in yet, but just a note for everybody, Paul did provide a link to the likely earlier sighting notes on eBird for the red-headed woodpecker. If you guys want to check that out, that's in the
Oh,
chat.
good. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah,
you guys should check that out. Don't take my hearsay for it. Yeah, so I was mentioning that I was brought on as a voting member to the committee when I saw Martin Meyer's post to the listserv that he was getting done with his duties on the records committee, and I felt very strongly that this committee keep going. So I emailed Martin to let him know that if he was having trouble finding someone to fill his place, to let me know, and I would apply some pressure in the right areas. And his response was not exactly what I expected. So it took me a few months to come around to it, but it made sense. So I jumped up from a voting member to taking over as secretary. So I was a voting member for July through October, and then in October I became secretary officially. So thanks, Martin, for all your hard work and setting everything up for me to just slip right into and easily take over. That was a very easy transition. that may otherwise not have been so. So thanks, Martin. But if there's no questions, I suppose we'll jump into our rare bird quiz.
Yeah, no questions yet, and we can take some more time at the end if anybody comes up with
All
anything.
right.
And everyone, please just field your answers to the bird quiz in the chat, and I'll let Ned know what you come up with.
All right. Well, here we go. Oops. There we go. So, bird number one. The one in the middle, the big one, not the two smaller ones on either side of it.
No guesses yet, but we'll give them a minute.
All right, we'll give them a couple minutes and then I can talk about it.
I think we can go ahead and let them know.
Nobody? No guesses? Well, I suppose that's not entirely surprising. This bird would be, I think when I was checking, we've got one endorsed record. This is a sharp-tailed. Oh,
okay.
Oh, what do we got?
One guess.
Okay.
Golden plover.
No, not a plover. So this is actually a sharp-tailed sandpiper. Plovers are going to have a stouter bill, maybe not quite as long, and not as long of legs. The overall body structure is a bit different than a plover. But you look at the fine-tipped bill, and the body structure will suggest this is a sandpiper. Those are least sandpipers on either side of it, and you can see there's a notable size difference. So the rufous cap, the size difference, the yellow legs, those are all good field marks for your sharp-tailed sandpiper, which would be a great bird to find here in Nevada. All right, we'll go to our next bird.
Okay, one guess.
Have any guests?
Yeah, we'll give a second. See if anybody else is going to chime in. Okay, we have a couple guesses for gray-cheeked thrush.
That it is.
Okay.
That is a gray-cheeked thrush.
Joe and Hannah got it.
All right. Yeah, gray-cheeked thrush. They look very similar to our expected hermit and Swainson's thrushes, but they have those gray cheeks, which are not always so easy to see. But Swainson's thrushes really have that buffy, bold spectacles. Hermit thrushes, not quite as gray around the face, but also the tail on the hermit thrush, those red feathers are very, very useful to separate them. So one of these days we'll get a gray-cheeked thrush showing up in Nevada. We have historical hearsay, but nothing solid or reviewable. Anything else on this one, Kayla, or should I go to the next one?
No more, I guess. Yeah, nothing else on this one.
All right. And go. There we go.
Okay, we just had 3 guesses come in for glaucous gull.
Glaucous gull, that is correct.
All right, so who do we have here that guessed? Linda, Joe, Chris, and Hannah. So a lot of people got it.
Nice. Yeah, these guys are monster gulls. If you see a glaucous gull, you are gonna know something's up, and you're gonna be hitting the books to figure out what you just saw. It's huge. It doesn't have black wingtips, and those two marks right there are gonna get you thinking something weird is going on. I mean, you can see the gull in the lower left there, which is, I maybe your ring-billed or California, but much smaller. So with the large gulls, the bicolored bill is very useful for glaucous gull, the dark tip with the light base. Some of the other gulls are going to have an all dark bill or just differently patterned depending on the age. But glaucous gull. Next bird.
Couple people typing. Oh, we have a bunch of answers rolling in for black vulture.
Ooh, people are excited about the black vulture, huh? That's good. That's good. This is a black vulture. So people are going to be ready when one finally shows up in Nevada. That's what we like to see.
That's my vote.
Yep, this is a black vulture. Turkey vultures have a red head. Immature turkey vultures do have a gray head, so careful on perched birds like this. Looking for that wing pattern can be useful, but this is a black vulture.
A couple people are typing in. Give me one more second here. Okay, we have several guesses for black-throated green warbler.
That is correct.
Anna, Chris, Joe, and yeah, Anna, Chris, and Joe. Cool.
Nice work, guys. That is a black-throated green warbler. They can look similar to Townsend's warblers, though you'll know Townsend's warblers have a dark contrasting cap. Black-throated greens don't usually show that. This particular bird looks to be a female, so is duller than a male would be, but the black throat is going to be more significant in black-throated greens than your Townsend's. And the last thing that's really useful for these is that yellow wash right by the vent is pretty distinct in most plumages of most individuals of black-throated green warblers. And our next bird.
See, a couple people are typing. Okay. We have, let's see, I'll give them another second here. 1, 2. We have 3 votes for Nuttall's woodpecker and 1 for ladderback.
This is a Nuttall's woodpecker. They do look similar to ladderback woodpeckers, so not a bad guess. You can separate them. There's a number of plumage differences. The bill and the face are most useful. That short bill and the clean white face. Ladderback woodpeckers have a longer bill, and they have buffy feathers at the base of the bill and on the face. That big black shoulder bar there's kind of a suggestion of it in this photo, but the angle's not the best. But above the white bars on the back, your Nuttall's woodpecker is going to have a thick black patch where your ladderback will not generally show that. They're closely related species. Their ranges overlap. They likely hybridize, so the idea is not always so straightforward. But this appears to be a good Nuttall's woodpecker.
Okay, a couple guesses rolling in. I'll give them another second here.
let them roll in.
To time this next time. Okay, so it's kind of split between Pacific or American golden plover. We also have a guess for Wilson's.
All right. Well, this is a black-bellied plover.
Tricky.
Yeah, thicker bill than the golden plovers. The golden plovers are going to show more speckling on the back and kind of a golden brownish wash, just a little more rich in color. I guess I find black bellies to be kind of more grayish, brownish, muted color tones. But thick bill, body structure, and in the field you'd have a little more context, and you could see it's a little bigger than a Wilson's would be.
Well, this is a fun one. Let's see. Guesses are rolling in for California condor.
Guesses are correct. These are California condors. I don't think I need to talk about the field marks. They are massive vultures, naked head, big wingtips, fingertips, pretty distinct bird. They're coming. They'll be here any day.
Mhm. See, a couple people are typing here. Looks like, let's see, turkey vulture is the consensus.
That is a turkey vulture.
Mhm.
Just because I mentioned earlier with the black vulture, how immature turkey vultures don't have the full red heads. They take a little while to turn red, but this guy was spreading his wings and showing off those white flight feathers. That's a young turkey vulture.
Couple guesses coming in. So far as unanimous for LeConte's thrasher.
That it is. Again, not necessarily an unexpected crazy rare bird in the state, depending on where you are, but one not a lot of us see very often. So fun bird that might be shifting its distribution. Who knows what's happening? Next bird.
Let's see. Okay, guesses are rolling in for this one for bald eagle, and quite a few people specified juvenile bald eagle.
That is correct. That is a juvenile bald eagle. I spent some few minutes trying to find this photo of a bird that looked like this because of that wing pattern. That was just an interesting old record in the database that was reviewed for California condor, talking about that wing pattern with the white there. So you might remember that photo of the condor I just had up, that wing pattern could look similar if you didn't see the bird in the right conditions. But yes, this is an immature bald eagle.
All right, couple guesses coming in. Let's see here. Oops. We have a couple guesses for morning warbler and a couple for Connecticut warbler.
Yeah, this is a morning warbler. Connecticut warblers, bolder eye-ring and maybe longer legged, but and you can't quite see the undertail coverts. That's maybe the best way to separate these from Connecticut, is that Connecticut warblers have really, really long undertail coverts that almost reach the tip of the tail, whereas in morning warblers, they're not quite so long. But it can look similar to a lot of other warblers. So this is, in my opinion, a tricky ID, where generally morning warblers don't show that white around the eye, but the young ones can show that. So yes, this is a morning warbler.
Okay, let's see here. A couple guesses rolling in for this one. We have several for McGillivray's warbler and another for Nashville.
So this is a McGillivray's warbler, by no means a rare bird here in Nevada, fairly expected bird. But you can see the eye pattern, I guess. A Nashville warbler is going to show a full, complete eye ring, whereas this one's broken in the front and back, getting that classic eye arc look. This is a female bird, a little more washed out, not as bold and striking as the males, but in the same genus as morning in Connecticut, so can look a little similar to them. Nashville warblers also have a thinner bill, is a good way to separate them from this group, because they do look superficially similar plumage wise, but the structure of the bird and the thickness of the bill is useful to separate out your Nashvilles. And our next bird.
Okay, now we have guesses rolling in for Nashville warbler.
And this is a Nashville warbler. That is the point I was trying to make. You can see the bill a lot thinner. The back is gray. Some of the other, I guess you can't see the back of that bird as much, but you can see the back of this bird. The morning warbler's got those yellowish, greenish hints to it, and maybe a suggestion of that on this McGillivray's. But then Nashville's got a nice, clean gray back. And this is probably a young bird that doesn't have such a bold eye ring, but the adult Nashville warblers have a really bold, striking white eye ring that really stands out. But a much daintier bill, and those undertail coverts are much shorter than any of the than your Connecticut morning McGillivray's types. Excuse me. Next up.
Guesses are rolling in pretty quickly for this one. Yeah, Harris's sparrow.
That is correct. That's Harris's sparrow, our largest sparrow we've got in the U.S. This is an immature bird. The adults are more, you can see the black starting to come in, but adults have a really striking black face with a bright pink bill. And so the bright colored bill is useful because not a lot of sparrows have that. The black specking there, speckling on the breast, and those mustache lines, and then you can see that spot behind the eye, that dark auricular spot is just barely visible from this photo, but Yes, indeed. That is a Harris's sparrow.
Give people another minute on this one.
Yep.
Okay, we have a couple guesses here
Okay.
for glaucous winged gull, and then someone threw out Thayer's gull.
Good. So yeah, I would say glaucous winged on this one. So Thayers are going to show darker wingtips, really black wingtips, and the head shape is useful to separate those two. Thayer's Iceland gull has a taller, more kind of rounded head, and these guys have a flatter crown shape. Both are going to have that really stout, all dark bill, though. In the even brown coloring is unique among young gulls, and the leg color as well. I mentioned earlier about hybrid gulls, which these guys are part of that complex, and so identify with care. Basically, take all field marks into consideration, and really consult the books when you've got a gull. Like they're going to look like large gulls. They strike the observer as large, and they seem different. But there's a lot of hybridization and weird stuff going on with these guys, Western gulls. So the idea is not always straightforward. But in this case, this bird looks good to me for glaucous wing, with really no dark coloring towards the tips of the primaries there. Yeah.
Let's see. Several guesses rolling in. Ooh, a lot of guesses. Hutton's Vireo consensus.
Yep, that is a Hutton's Vireo. They can look similar to your ruby crown kinglet, remarkably so in some cases. But if you look at a few field marks, they separate out pretty easily. The bill is the thing that jumps out to me first off. That's a thick Vireo bill. The bird's overall size is larger than a kinglet too, and they don't really behave like kinglets, so they definitely seem different. But that pattern with the eyes, the lighter lores there, a hint of a spectacle. And this bird, you can see ruby crown kinglets really have a dark black between the white wing bars, and the Huttons don't really show that so much. And finally, the leg color too, those blue-gray Vireo legs. But you guys were on it. Hutton's Vireo.
Okay, a couple guesses rolling in for Thayer's gull.
That is what I would call this bird as well. Those dark wingtips, dark primaries, the head shape, evenly brown, all dark bill, large gull. I'll just back up quickly to that. Whoops, right there. You can see the difference in the wingtips and the head shape pretty apparently from the two photos, I think. So again, these guys, hybridization in young gulls is an important consideration when making these identifications. So consult the books, identify with care, and maybe I'll just plug Pete Dunn's book, Gulls Simplified, because it's an incredible resource for identifying gulls. But this is our last quiz bird. So if there are any more questions, I am happy to field them. Questions on record committee function, how we do what we do, questions on bird ID, why one species was one species versus another?
Let's see. We have no questions coming in yet. We can give them a minute here.
Well, thanks for watching, everybody. I had a great time sharing our records with you, and thanks to everyone that submitted to the records committee this year. We appreciate that. Thanks to my committee members for all of their hard work. And
we have a quick question. Let's see. Where is the photo taken on the lower left?
lower left.
I guess a photo of all of us. I don't even.
Oh yeah,
I don't
look
remember
at
what
that.
it was.
You're even in that photo.
I know. I don't remember.
That's the McCarran Ranch. That's the Truckee River. McCarran Ranch, just east of Reno.
Figured. I just wasn't sure exactly where.
Yep, there's a good access off the Mustang exit, and you can access the property from sort of the west end and walk in there.
Nice. Oh yeah, that's where we did training back in 2019.
That's exactly when that photo was taken.
Cool. I'm gonna go ahead and stop your sharing. Share my screen.
Cool.
Oops, I can't share it. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for joining us this evening. We have some exciting events coming up later in the year. So please check out our website and follow us on social media, subscribe to our newsletter to stay in the loop. You can visit our website, gbbo.org, to learn on how to get involved with our Opinion J Community Science Project. We also have the 2022 Birdathon coming up in May, and details will be announced in the coming weeks, but start thinking about teams and big day routes. And we'd like to thank you all again for supporting our Adopt a Transect program this past Giving Tuesday. You can also find more information about that on our website and how you can support bird conservation in Nevada. Thanks again, and thanks to Ned for presenting, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, Kayla. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.